A few months ago, my family and I went on our first vacation since 2020. We hadn't been to Disney World for a few years, so that seemed like the right place to go for a safe vacation. Of course, that's not why I went. Since this is the first time I went down there in years, I finally got to see the new Star Wars Galaxy's Edge part of the park, and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. And of course, I'd been told about their lightsaber replica shop, and let's just say that's $250 well spent. Of course, I had to get my other favorite lightsaber that I alluded to back when I built Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, the broken lightsaber of Cal Kestis. And yeah, I could just ramble on about this replica because it's really cool, and I usually don't splurge on things like that. But this, of course, is an episode of DIY Pop Culture Builds, so I'm going to see if I can make my own replica of my other favorite lightsaber for a tenth of the price. Cal Kestis was a young Padawan of the Lasat Jedi Master Jaro DePaul. At the end of the Clone Wars during Order 66, Jaro defended Cal against their clone trooper assassins and became mortally wounded in the process. Before his death, he gifted Cal with the still working half of what used to be his double-sided lightsaber. Cal would go into hiding for the next 5 years and use his lightsaber throughout the events of the game Jedi Fallen Order, and presumably also through the sequel, Jedi Survivor, that we just got a trailer for a few months ago when this video came out. Seriously, for all of everyone's complaining, it's a pretty good time to be a Star Wars fan. So for this build, I used PVC pipe, a smaller acrylic pipe that fit perfectly into the PVC. However, if you find a PVC pipe that is the right size, you could also use that. I also used a wooden dowel, silver and black paint, and some copper wires from the art store. Now, if you're an avid watcher of this channel, you might be confused as to why I did not mention aluminum tape in that list, as that's what I usually use to make my metal parts look metal. And that's no mistake, that's because I've been searching for a replacement to that method, because even though it works, technically, it only really works well on flat surfaces. I'm going to try out the all-clad lacquers. They're kind of expensive, but this is apparently the best one for the job. This isn't a sponsor. This is legit just me trying to figure out the best metallizer paint, and I've been told that this is the best, so we're going to find out. I mean, I know how it turned out, because I already made the video. But you don't. Anyway, to start out, I drew out the parts that I needed onto my PVC pipe. The first one I did was the control box section. I then used my Dremel to cut it out and shaved off the material on the sides to achieve that sloped effect on either end. I then cut the grooves into the sides of the PVC as so, and cut the smaller ridges onto the other side of the control sleeve. Using the same process, I cut 2 little box-shaped buttons that I glued onto the sleeve above these ridges. Using the PVC for the final time, I cut out the 2 emitter shrouds that will sit on the top of the lightsaber. I then took the acrylic tube and cut it to 14 inches long, then following some reference pictures and using the Dremel, I cut out the shattered bottom piece and the grip pattern along the bottom half of the handle. I then bent up the broken bottom section. On the in-game model, there's this warped internal structure that sits inside the broken end of the handle. I carved that out of my dowel using the Dremel. Now it's time to put the all-clad to the test. The way this stuff works is it's a 2-part system. The first one is a highly reflective black lacquer, and the second coat is a clear lacquer with these flakes of, I think, aluminum suspended in it. Since I had to break down and get myself a spray pen for this stuff, and they also come in these tiny, super expensive vials, this put me up to like $60 for just these 3 items. So if you're going to build this on a budget, regular silver paint or just the aluminum plumber's tape method that I talked about earlier should do the trick. So I strung up these 4 metal pieces and then sprayed on the base coat. After letting that sit and dry for a day and cleaning out my spray pen, I did the same thing with the metallizer agent. Now, I learned this the hard way. These mistakes can be seen in a few places on this, but don't spray on these layers too super thick or it'll pool up and you'll get dull spots on your finish. In the future, when I go on to implement more stuff like this, I'm going to try to experiment with the best method of painting these this way. And now, of course, since you've heard me say in the future, you can probably guess that this came out pretty good. And though it's not a perfect chrome, I have a pretty big feeling that that has more to do with my skill with this finicky product than it is its actual effectiveness. I then lined up where the individual pieces would go so that I knew where to mask off the bottom layer of the handle, and then I painted the bottom of the handle a gloss black. It's important that you paint far enough up the handle so that the black paint can be seen through the cuts in the control sleeve section. I took the exposed internals section and painted it with just the regular silver, as it's a very dull metal color in the original, and I also lightly sprayed it with the black for good measure. And as a final step, I took out my copper wire and cut out a few sections, bent them into the proper shapes to appear frayed at the appropriate angles, and I glued them on. And with all that put together, you have your very own replica of Cal Kestis Lightsaber. This build was an absolute success. Yeah, it was a lot more expensive than I usually allow, because I try to do these on a shoestring budget as a rule, but I'm glad I did, as now not only have I built both of my favorite lightsabers, but they're both also the two best ones that I've ever built. This build cost me about 75 to 80 bucks, including the new spray pen. However, if you just make yours with the regular paint or the aluminum tape, as I usually do, it'll probably cost you around 20 bucks. Now that's all for this week. If you have any prop suggestions, then leave them in the comments below, as I usually end up building them at some point or another. And as always, if you like this video and want to see more like it, then subscribe and turn on the bell to get notified when I upload next.